This podcast story and characters are fictitious. Certain long-standing, non-fictional institutions, agencies, and serial killers are mentioned, but the actual characters and events involved in this podcast are entirely imaginary. Listener discretion is advised.
It's One Killer Podcast. It's One Killer Podcast.
It's One Killer Podcast.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to One Killer Podcast with me, your trusty host, Willow. We're the only podcast I know of that recounts serial killer stories live from where they happened. We just finished our arc on Jeffrey Dahmer in Milwaukee, and boy, let me tell you that I think that's one of the best seasons we've done on this podcast. Now, I think I'm supposed to be in Seattle tomorrow for a live version of the show, but I had to pit stop in the small town of Westerling, Ohio for a special mini-sode. See, a few months back, I get this email and it shook me to my absolute core. Let me pull it up and I'll read it to you guys. Dear Willow, I caught your latest podcast where you were asking for hometown murder stories, and do I have one for you? I live in Westerling, Ohio, and we are a special town. We have no newspaper, no magazines, we don't even have a website or a local news station. You're probably asking why, right? Well, that's where the story gets interesting. 2 years ago, we had all those things. Well, we didn't have a magazine, but that's only because there aren't enough people living in Westerling to want a magazine. But anyway, 2 years ago, there was an attack at the newspaper, the Westerling Chronicle, where all the lights went out in the middle of the production night shift, and when they came back on, 12 people were dead, their throats slit, still sitting in their desks. Then, 3 nights later, the same thing happened at WQTZ, the local news station. Soon, all the media outlets shut down, and we haven't read a paper since. Even the local high school newspaper shut down. We went from living in 2016 to living pre-free press. And don't get me wrong, the police department tried to help, but guess what happened at their press conference? The lights went out, the sheriff dead, still at the podium. I thought it might be cool for you to stop here along your tour in a few months, maybe learn some more about the town. Sincerely yours, Nora Selleck. So after that, you know I had to stop. And let me tell you, Westerling is tiny. I did happen to drive past the old Westerling Chronicle building, and I'm sad to report, it's completely covered in graffiti, and it's so beat up, I almost did not recognize it. I don't think I've ever seen a town without a newspaper, at the very least. But anyway, that's how I ended up starting a mini podcast in my van that's parked in the parking lot of an abandoned newspaper building. I also went by the local diner earlier today to ask a couple of questions and get some lunch, and this is how that went. So, what do you know about the media murders?
What can I get you to drink?
Water, please. But do you know anything about what happened at the Westerling Chronicle or at WQTZ?
I know that when people talk about the incidents or spread rumors and news like that, they get killed. I'd like to stay alive. I'll be right back with your water.
Oh, wait!
They've all developed this theory that if they talk about the killer, he will come back and kill them.
But you don't think that's true, do you?
I guess we'll never know. All we know is that every time someone tries to talk about him, they end up with their throat slit right where they are. So we keep our mouths closed.
So if you couldn't tell, it was an interesting lunch, although the food was actually really good, like 12 out of 10. It seems like Nora from the email is really the only one willing to talk about this whole thing, so maybe she can clarify her email a little. I've got her on the phone here to talk a little bit more about it. Hey Nora, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited you got my email.
So, this all started in 2016, when the Westerling Chronicle was shut down?
Yeah, when all those people were murdered at the Chronicle, everyone got really worried, and we didn't think that anything like it would happen again until WQTZ got attacked too. After that, every media outlet in town shut its doors.
Has anyone asked any questions? It feels kind of like it happened, and everyone is just like pretending that Westerling never even had a paper or a news station.
I think a lot of us are still pretty scared to talk about it.
Well, do you think the killer's ever going to be caught?
Honestly, no. I think the killer killed the sheriff to send a message that no one should or can solve anything.
And it's been 2 years without any sort of media outlets, like at all?
I mean, we still have the internet and everything. We just don't have any local news sources.
Okay, well then, so how do you hear about...
Willow, are you there?
back to quarters, rescue 39. Question route with July 4th, difficult breather at 147.46 hours. ¿Puedes hablar a la batería a ver si hay? ¿Sabe la chica? Continue. Injury. Incident squad of 118 Chesapeake, Leverett Avenue.
Famous podcaster Willow Helms was found dead in West Sterling, Ohio last night, according to local.
Runners on the corners. It's a long fly ball to left. That ball is out of here.
Firefighters responded to a van up in flames in the Western Lake Chronicle parking lot last night. A famous podcaster was found inside. More on Channel 3 tonight.
You betcha. Oh boy! Yummy.
Small Ohio town thrown into the spotlight as a popular podcast comes to a disheartening conclusion. Tonight at 10.
It's One Killer Podcast. It's One Killer Podcast.
Killer Podcast.